to Couch Co-op. I'm your host, Ian, and on today's show, we're going to talk about Grand Theft Auto. So let's skip all the pleasantries and get right to it and introduce today's couch co-hosts. First on the couch, Justin, huge Grand Theft Auto fan, probably the biggest fan I know.
We'll see.
And then we have John Patrick Kelly. He says he likes Grand Theft Auto. I'm not sure.
I like Grand Theft Auto.
And Jason, who's playing through Grand Theft Auto 5 right now.
Woo!
All right. Where do we even begin with this? Okay, so we're going to start with Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2, and I'm going to guess that none of you guys have played those games.
Biggest fan here, I've never played it.
Played both of them. They were freaking sweet.
I wish I had played it before this show.
So the British guy from England played the game that's designed by the British. Makes sense. Anyway, so anyone else played that?
I messed around with 2 a couple of times. Like, after 3 came out, I went and tracked down a copy of 2 because I loved 3. And I was like, let's see what this is all about. And
Did you get it on PC or was it a console?
I don't even remember. I had a friend who... maybe it was Jared. Like, somebody was like, here, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm pretty sure that it was a pirated copy on like a Dreamcast or something.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's Jason Wolford, if you guys are coming to find us.
Yeah.
But
stolen copy. But I played that shit for a good, like, I couldn't put it down for like 6 minutes. And I was like, this game is stupid.
So if you guys haven't played it, I'm sure you've like looked it up. It's a 2D top down, but it's an open world game. It's still basically the game. You go around, you rob cars, you do missions.
Right. It was the first open world type game, action game of its time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it was developed by DMA. Let me look at my notes.
DMA Design?
DMA Design, who famously did the Lemmings game that we all know. Mm-hmm. So they made Lemmings way back in the day, got all this money, sold so many copies, and they decided to develop this GTA game. Then the license for GTA kind of went through some hands, I guess, and then eventually Rockstar North. And that would get us to Grand Theft Auto 3, since I'm pretty sure we don't have anything else to say about Grand Theft Auto 1 or 2. So.
Well, the only thing that I want to mention that I learned in doing my research is that the original game, before they decided to call it Grand Theft Auto, was going to be called Race and Chase.
Oh, wow.
And it was going to be on the Commodore Amiga.
Was it?
Yeah.
You know that?
Why didn't
they didn't have enough power to do the 3D.
Why didn't we have the British guy on the show?
I don't know. He seems to be very interested in this subject.
We do.
Okay.
Disembodied voice.
Grand Theft Auto 4.
Oh.
When I run the camera, I won't shut up. So like unofficial fourth person.
So Grand Theft Auto 3, now by Rockstar. Different creators. You have Dan and Sam Houser, they're brothers. How did you guys first find out about this game?
I went to a house party at the beach, and there was a bunch of guys sitting around playing it, and I'd never even heard of the first 2, and basically just watched them play it the whole time I was at the party because it looked amazing. And then I couldn't wait to get home and play it. But I actually didn't even pick it up until Vice City came out, which you kind of let me play when I lived with you. But then I immediately went and picked up 3 because I was hooked after that. So,
John?
My dad must have picked it up for me because I was probably in middle school.
Good parenting.
Good parenting. And then our next episode, violence in video games.
In the family.
Anyway.
And so I played it, and it was fun. But like, it's kind of hard for me to, because when I was younger, I didn't really know it was a great game, but I wasn't really like self-aware. So even if a game was bad, I wouldn't even think it was bad. I'd be like, this game's kind of hard to play. So even though Grand Theft Auto was great, but like I can't really remember how I really felt about it, just because it was new and it was just like, oh, okay, I'm shooting people, whatever. There was one time though that like I was at this like band camp thing, and like they happened to have the guys I was staying with were like they had a PS2 and they had a Grand Theft Auto 3 copy, and there was like my roommates and then like 2 other chicks in the room, and like one of them was like playing Grand Theft Auto. And I was like, "Oh, you want to know how you can get some free money?" And then like it's just like pick up a hooker, gun her down, and it's like, "Look, free money." And then the girls in the room were like horrified. They're like, "Oh my god, how could you do that?" And I was just like, "Oh, okay."
You're an awful person, John.
Yeah.
Jason.
Again,
I would just like to say that to this day, everyone just thinks of Grand Theft Auto, unless you've played it, as the game where you kill hookers. Like I've mentioned to like half a dozen people
Grand Theft
that
Hooker?
I was marathoning Grand Theft Auto 5 in preparation for this show today, and everyone was like, "Oh, are you killing a lot of hookers?" And for the record, I haven't killed a single hooker in Grand Theft Auto 5.
Good job.
I'm too entrenched in the story.
Yet.
good
I
job.
don't have time.
To be honest, I never really killed hookers. I got a lot of sex from hookers, but I don't know, man.
Well, Ian Southworth is a good person, and he pays for his sex.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Sometimes,
Take his money back.
sometimes they say things to you though, like if you just want the $50 job and you don't want the $100, and then you quit after $50, then they'll be like, "Oh, you're not a good man," or whatever like that. And it's like, okay. And then
Now
that's
you're
when you
gonna
get
die.
out, But I don't just like run them over or shoot them.
So Jason,
Hummel.
let's get back to the topic. Your first time playing the game.
My
Where
first time
where did you find
playing
out?
the
and-
game. My little brother Nick had a copy of it. Yeah, and I watched him play it for a while, and then I was like, all right, I'm totally gonna get in on this. This looks really fun.
And what game was that? 3?
3.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 was the first one that I had played, and I don't know where Nick got a copy of that, but yeah,
In the underground.
yeah,
So as a
black market.
as a game, when you're playing it for that first time, I mean, do you know that this is like changing? I mean, this is a big game in the milestone of video games for like what it became and what it created.
Grand Theft Auto 3 absolutely changed the world as far as like how games are made. I mean, that was essentially like the first massive sandbox game, open world. It was the first time, at least for me, that I was playing a non-linear video game.
Right.
And I never even finished the story of Grand Theft Auto 3. I just spent the whole time driving around in these cars trying to find all the jumps. Like I'm not a completionist. I've never like gotten 100% in all these in any of the Grand Theft Auto games because there's so much to do, and eventually I do get bored with it. Like I don't even think Grand Theft Auto 3 was my game of the year that particular year that it came out, but it was in my top 5. And yeah, it was just, driving around this big open world and finding things to drive my car off of. There was something really fun about that, and it sounds so simplistic that it's almost shameful that I spent so many hours looking for all those jumps and just going, whee,
So-
having my little Dukes of Hazzard.
So what else? What do you guys like? You're playing this game. I mean, what do you? I mean, you're a kid. You probably don't. You're saying you don't really quite.
Yeah.
But Justin, I mean, we play that game. I mean, it's like this is different. I mean, it's super violent. It's. The
I
sex,
honestly
the-
feel like it was probably the first time, even though like Resident Evil had already been out. I really feel like it was the first time I ever played a game that was meant for me. Like it's the first time I guess I thought video games are now no longer for kids. Like this is like kids now making video games, and now they're making them for adults. It's the first time that it was like this is what's going to take me away from being a kid gamer. Now I'm going to be an adult gamer, and I'm going to be playing games with more serious plot lines and things like that.
So one interesting note before we move on. So I was in my research, I found out that the company that designed the engine for Grand Theft Auto 3, the renderware engine,
Yeah.
that was created by Crichton Games, who Burnout and Need for Speed and all those.
Criterion.
Criterion, I mean.
Yeah.
You're right. My bad. Pronouncing it wrong. As always. So we move on to Vice City, which is arguably my favorite game in the series. Just the music, the world they created,
Right.
the acting, and we should talk about the cast. I mean, even in the first one, there's all these big Hollywood voice actors, or actually real actors, but voicing.
Well, to jump back to the third one, that wasn't even really like, I mean, it was known, but it wasn't like a big deal until Vice City. where then it was like that's what people would say, especially the guy from Miami Vice. What's his name?
Didn't Ray
Don
Liotta
John?
voice?
Yeah,
No, the other
it was
guy.
Tommy Vercetti, Ray Liotta.
Yeah, Ray
Ray
Liotta
Liotta
was
did
the main
Vercetti,
character,
right.
and
That game is awesome. This one brings another thing to me. The games themselves, they lend a lot to like TV and film. Does that ever bother you that they're like just drops of like, you know, they're taking something out of Scarface or taking something out of The Godfather? I mean, that ever bother
Not at
you?
all, because then it's like now you get to watch your favorite movie, but be the guy.
Yeah.
Be the character. I mean, in Vice City, they even had the room with the bloody bathroom and everything, you know, as an ode to Scarface. And when you saw that, you were like, yes, you know, because you loved that movie and was like, great. Now I get to do it.
I think the reason I like Vice City so much is it's just so vibrant and the neon colors. And I think that's why it's my favorite of them. Even though
It fits the era, you know, the
Yeah.
80s Miami Vice type. It was perfect. Even to the very beginning where they just start with where they're on the boat and everything, and they're playing what is it? What song was in the beginning of that game?
Dude, I didn't go back to it.
no, yeah,
You know, one thing you were saying
I'm gonna think about it.
Saying earlier was
Someone
about,
else talk about Vice City.
about how, like, you know, Rockstar doesn't want to do big name actors because people think of the actor more than the character they want them to portray. But when I played Vice City, I didn't know who Ray Liotta was. So to
Right.
me, it was like just Tommy Vercetti.
Right.
And even now, you know, after I've learned it's Ray Liotta, I'm still like, oh, but he was great as Tommy Vercetti.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think of Ray Liotta, and I think Goodfellas, but then I also think Tommy Vercetti. I mean, those are like the two performances.
Didn't they have like
in
a?
that.
Didn't they? I want to say that they had a voice acting award, and he won an actual award for that.
I
Yeah,
didn't look
he-
into the awards.
But I think it was probably just because the game was so popular at the time that they were like, we got to thank Ray Liotta for doing this.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what started. Probably other actors probably were starting to take video games seriously after Vice City, where they were like, well, this whole time video games have been approaching me to do voice acting for the games, and I was like, that's video games. But now that I've seen Ray Liotta do it, and who else? Burt Reynolds.
They've
and,
done it. I mean, there was games before that have done it. I mean, you have
well, like Mark Hamill and stuff like that.
all right, but James Earl Jones and Bean, I forget his name from Far Cry. Anyway, they're not important. So
There have been a lot of big actors that have done video game voices, starting with the late end PS2. That was a really big thing, and I 150% agree with Rockstar's current decision to ditch that, because I do picture the actor.
yeah, it makes sense.
It feels to me like an actor that I know their voice talking out of some strange face,
Right.
and it takes me out of it. That said, I mean, I'd really only watched like 3 Ray Liotta movies in my entire life before Vice City, and that game blew my freaking mind.
Right.
3 I really enjoyed, but Vice City sincerely was my game of the year that year. I couldn't put it down. Like, just the way that they captured, I mean, I'm not going to say it's a realistic 80s vibe,
Right.
but they captured a vibe of 80s film that I loved. And to go
Right.
back to the point that you were making, actually feeling like I was Scarface with that freaking PS2 controller in my hand was... It was just this mind-blowing experience. I had so much fun playing that game until I stopped having fun playing that game. Like,
So
because eventually I got second mission to the end and I was doing great, but that NPC character who was like my buddy, he kept dying.
right, and we'll get into some.
So
of
I
that.
just like
You were like,
threw the
just like,
controller.
let's just get in the
We'll get
90s and grunge.
We'll get into some of
Jeez.
that, but one thing I wanted to bring up too, because I think Vice City is personally also my favorite soundtrack for the series with the music collection. But
Hands down.
one thing that's important is like Grand Theft Auto 3 ushered in this like kind of radio station, and then all the work they put in with the radio, the disc jockeys and all that work. It really helps to build their world, and I just wanted to talk about the music and the radio stations themselves a little bit.
Well, I haven't played the first and second one, but in my research, I think the second one was the first time where they actually had radio stations where you could listen to them, and I guess you could only get certain radio stations on your radio, like the signal wouldn't, depending on where you were, the signal wouldn't be there. I don't know
That's
if that was
funny.
for memory space or what. Now, in the current games, depending on where you are in the world, determines what radio is on when you get in the car. But I thought that was pretty interesting that like you couldn't get what you could hear in the city out in the country or
Right,
whatever
right. Makes sense.
because you couldn't get the signal. And I kind of almost wish it was kind of like still like that.
But I just like the care that goes into the song selection, I think.
I
mean,
think they realize it's a very important part of the game, especially. Well, see, but like when you think '80s, and pop culture '80s, you think music like totally. You recognize that. And then with San Andreas, it was like early '90s, gangster rap
Yeah, right.
and stuff like that. So, but I love '80s music anyways.
Right.
So being able to hear all my favorite '80s music and be able to go and chop people up with chainsaws is pretty sweet.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree with your point that Vice City had the best soundtrack. Like, no question about it. The other ones have done a good job of creating an atmosphere, but there was such a narrow time point in Vice City, and there was a more narrow focus on the vibe that they were trying to create with that 80s pop culture that they had that a little bit in San Andreas, but like in 4 and 5 soundtrack wise, it wasn't nearly as focused. Like I can switch the channels in 5 and
Right.
like
That makes
I've got
sense.
punk rock on one station, I've got gangster rap on another station, I've got Johnny Cash playing on another
it's
one.
kind of one of my complaints about the series at this point, because I feel like they used to kind of create these kind of worlds. Now it's just really trying to be more real world. And,
Yes, and that's
which
true.
is cool, but
But the thing that they've done as they are getting out of that narrowly tailored, like specific point
Right.
in time
Right.
and flushing that out with music, as they've tried to make it the real world, the thing that they just keep doing better and better with every game is the social commentary on the radio.
Oh
Like,
yeah, jeez, I didn't even think about that.
Oh, yeah,
that
it is
some of the best stuff that you can hear.
I was just
It's like
yesterday.
early Daily Show stuff almost.
Yeah. It's the amount of effort that they put into parodying modern consumer culture, political
Especially American,
movements.
like focusing on Americans specifically.
Yeah, it was. I was playing Grand Theft Auto 5 yesterday, and it just cracked me up. A car commercial came on, and they were like, "Bravado Motors, we aren't letting go of American culture. We know what you want. A completely overpowered vehicle that has no practical use, that guzzles fuel, that has layback room in the seat for blowjobs, and cruise control so you can text while you drive home from the bar."
It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's the
And
game
sometimes
is hilarious.
and sometimes you don't even realize that's going on because you're so involved in the game that these people are having these conversations.
oh no, the social commentary and satire that takes place on the TV, radio, like
And on the internet. you get on the
I
internet.
stop and read the billboards in that game because they are hilarious, and it's not just there's this very immature aspect that Grand Theft Auto has sort of a reputation for, but their social commentary has so much wit to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's smart and it's poignant, and I absolutely love that about the series.
Well, British people are pretty good at making fun of Americans.
But GTA 5 got somebody get
Remember,
a lot of flack for
It's too
that
easy.
this time around, though, for their like social like people were really like digging in, like, oh, they're making fun of like Americans or pop culture, and even like so far as like some housewife is like, I'm suing Rockstar for making fun of my life. Yeah, it's not, or like
I think they even referenced Obamacare in the game. They talked about the government health care in the game. I don't remember specifically word for word what they said, but I was listening to it and I was like, wow, they're like on top of current issues that are going on in this country.
And kind of segueing into that, the controversy. So we get into San Andreas. Grand Theft Auto has always been a controversial game because of the violence and the sex and whatever. But on top of that, in San Andreas, we have the hot coffee mod that comes in.
Well, San Andreas, I was really excited for it because I needed something after Vice City. Totally looking forward to it. I was having dreams about it. I even called I told my friend Gabe, I said, you know what music would be great for the game is Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses, and we were watching wrestling one night, and they premiered the commercial, and that was in it, like, fit perfectly with the game. Anyways, I knew that they were going to throw everything into the game, because when they talked about it, it was like you can ride bicycles, the lowriders will have hydraulics, and you can customize cars.
Huge game.
And you can have jetpacks and fighter jets and fly planes and swim finally,
right.
and like.
I think that's my point. I think for like
they
a PS2 game,
crammed everything into it.
But it also shows all the glitchiness of that game.
It looks horrible.
Yeah, it's not
it does not look. If you're expecting a better graphic game, it was not. But it was huge. The whole game in itself, every single section of, like, let's say Los Santos,
right.
that section is as big as Vice City was,
right. No,
and Liberty City
I remember
was.
them talking about that.
It was like a massive, huge map.
But it's also the game that lost me. I mean, what do you guys think about the game?
I'm learning more and more. I seem to be minority in that, like, I liked San Andreas better than I liked GTA 4, just because I really liked the customization. Like clothes, I really liked how they, there was so much you can do with your wardrobe.
I agree. You could get fat if you wanted to.
Yeah, you could like change your body type, hair.
Because we all want to be fat.
Well, why not?
Well, and if you wanted to get a specific
tacos?
Girlfriend, you would have to get fat though.
Yes, I like that aspect too, where you had to. Yeah. Sorry.
Jason, come on. What do you think of this game of San Andreas?
Okay, San Andreas did not love it as much as Vice City.
It's still a game that
didn't find it as immersive.
Right.
However, that aspect of the game, like, whereas, Scarface, major movie, super excited growing up in that, I was a child of the 80s. So, I grew up with NWA.
Right.
And I felt like there was a video game where, hey, check it out. Right. I'm in NWA.
Right, I'm in Boys in the Hood now.
Yeah, that was awesome. But, I like Scarface more than I like Boys in the Hood.
It kind of weared on the system. You kind of see the flaws in the game, I think. Especially when you want to go out to the country and you'd have to get that grain miller thing. I don't know. That was such a pain. Yeah. The one thing I did like about the game a lot is, like, with the gang warfare, and you would, like, clear all the gangs, the certain gang, like the purple gang, whatever that was.
Bust out a minigun.
Anyway,
to wipe out the ballers.
Like, do the color coded thing. It's like they never really brought that back, right? That hasn't. See, that'd be.
Thank God.
Oh, you know, I kind of like that.
There were mini games in San Andreas that I'm really glad aren't there. Like going to the beach, and they were trying to like hammer in the popularity of Guitar Hero by making me dance.
Oh, yeah.
And I was
but I think they were like, basically, if it's an open world game, what can you do and what can't you do? I mean, you could gamble, you could go dancing, you could take your girlfriend out for a drink. I mean, anything you wanted to do, you could do in that game. And I think that's the part they've took that stuff away. But I think it's an okay sacrifice because they've excelled in many other things.
So let's talk about the controversy. I mean, we could talk about the controversy through all the games if you want to, but the most popular is that hot coffee mod, the fact that you could go in and have sex, and it was big news. And
well, it was PC only.
Well, you guys don't want to talk about it? Okay, let's move on now.
No, I just think it's ridiculous. This is like a different, I mean, it could be a whole different show, but it's like, why do people focus so much on sexual activities in video games when
like you can see it?
You can have, so what? You're killing cops. You're killing hookers. You're like
right.
you're gambling. You're doing all these other things, and yet people are like, that's okay, but you can't have sex. It's just like, it's the same thing with movies and how they rate movies. It's just ridiculous. And the fact that Rockstar had to give it an adults only until they were able to take that out of the game. It's why? Because they're having sex.
Well, we're pretty
lucky. Raping her.
Lucky technically, because isn't it in Australia and in Europe that game is censored, right?
Australia
is really.
But in England too, isn't it? Isn't the game censored? I think.
Yeah, I think it is. I think
But
you're right.
Australia focuses more on violence as well. It's not just sex. It's like any type, like Left 4 Dead 2 was like a huge thing.
I mean, your parents clearly are buying you games at the
I mean, that was my dad.
How
I don't
old
know
are you,
if
2
so much
years
about
old
my
or
mother.
something.
yeah.
Well, our Grand Theft Auto episode is going long, so we're gonna do a couch co-op first. We're going a 2-parter. A 1 and a 2. A 2. A deuce. We're gonna take a deuce. A deuce. Alright, we'll see you on the flip side. Welcome to Couch Co-op. You fucker.
Let's use that one.
Okay.
Dude.